November 22nd, 1963. Bam! Kennedy's gone. Assassinated in Dallas, Texas. The man that would replace him, Lyndon B. Johnson, ushered in a new foreign policy. Everything that Kennedy wanted done, denuclearization for Israel, registering under FARA, which would later become AIPAC, the American Zionist Council, that all went by the wayside. Matter of fact, Lyndon B. Johnson began giving Israel more money, more aid, and even did a cover-up when American citizens were attacked by Israeli military on the USS Liberty. So Lyndon B. Johnson ushered in a Israel-first foreign policy that the United States has been under since the 1960s. Since World War II, them boys, I'm going to refer to them in this monologue as them boys, so we don't get fucking banned, have enjoyed an enormous amount of protection, okay? Cloaked in the narrative of that event that went down in World War II. Never again, right? Never again. That's the quote. And they've been able to kind of have this cloak of protection for decades. After the John F. Kennedy assassination on November 22nd, 1963, the United States shifted from a neutral world power to a world power that had an Israel-first foreign policy. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, Myron, how did they get this? Well, I think it's very important for people to understand that the leading entrepreneurs, the leading in some of the wealthiest families, Rothschilds, etc., were able to put themselves in different countries, okay, and work together with other members of them boys to facilitate the creation of Israel. Don't forget, guys, the Balfour Declaration, which was released at post-World War I, if I'm not mistaken, was a promise to basically get the United States involved in the war. In exchange, the United Kingdom would give the Jewish people their own homeland, which was back then called Mandatory British Palestine. And whether American, British, Canadian, whatever it may be, all different members use their influence and their power to create the state of Israel. That's why, to this day, the Rothschilds are on Israeli currency. If you look at Israeli currency, the Rothschilds are on there, okay? They were critical to the creation of Israel. For those that don't know who the Rothschilds are, they're a banking dynasty family, okay? That's pretty much fucked around with the price of gold, funded both sides of many wars, and basically held a monopoly on the banking system for decades. But for me to really explain how the hell we got here, I need to explain all this to you, right? So the infrastructure was created in multiple of these countries, UK, United States, etc. Now, while the Rothschilds were getting deals negotiated to get the state of Israel created, wealthy Jewish businessmen were in the United States building up companies, creating enormous wealth and influence. So when the Havar Agreement occurred in the 1930s, which basically was the mass immigration of Germans to Mandatory British Palestine, you had the Jewish immigrants fighting with the native Palestinians. Okay? There were many skirmishes all throughout during World War II and post-World War II. And the reason why the Israelis were able to prevail against the Arabs and take over the land and create the state of Israel was because they were supported and funded by other Jews in different parts of the world who had massive influence and finances. I'll give you an example. In the United States, after World War II, there was an enormous amount of surplus weaponry. This weaponry fell into the hands of the black markets. And what ended up happening was a lot of organized crime figures, Bugsy Siegel, Mayor Lansky, it's Murder Inc., they controlled the ports. And they ensured that these weapons ended up in Israel. Well, this was illegal because weapons weren't supposed to be over there because there was an embargo at the time. But when you run the ports, you have a lot of money, you have a lot of influence. Because remember, the mafia was very powerful back then. Thanks to the bootlegging era, they made billions of dollars in today's dollars. They were untouchable. You could basically get away with whatever you want. So these weapons were sent to Israel. And Jewish terrorist groups, like the Irgun, the Haganah, the Stern Gang, got these weapons and utilized them to fight off the Arabs. On top of that, British and European Jews were also sending weapons and supplies to Israel for the fight. So not only did the early Israeli settlers get World War II surplus weaponry from the United States, they also got it from Europe. And these resources and weapons were vital to Israel's ability to create the State of Israel in 1948. Okay? Once the State of Israel was created, okay, through lobbying in other countries, etc., there was a Suez Canal crisis in 1956, if I'm not mistaken. And when the Suez Canal crisis occurred, and Israel basically had to run with like a dog with their tail between their legs, that pretty much woke them up and made them realize that though they won the wars and were able to create the State of Israel on May 15, 1948, they were surrounded by enemies that didn't want them there. The Arab world was not happy that they were there. And they knew that their future security depended on them getting nuclear weapons. I've talked about this in detail before, but I'm going to sum it up. They stole uranium from the United States, was able to use the same shipping routes that they used for the weapons years later in the 1960s. So they had this weapon route developed in the 40s. Then in the 1960s, they used those same routes and moved uranium into Israel, and they started conducting nuclear testing. And then bam, they're doing their testing, they're on the way to getting a nuclear weapon. Well, a guy named John F. Kennedy found out about this and said, fuck no. We don't want you guys having nuclear weapons. Calls up Ben Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel. I need you guys to de-arm. CIA is telling me that you guys have nuclear weapons. We have proof. Him and Ben Gurion had a silent battle via telegram for years. Well, the problem is that a lot of people wanted Kennedy gone. Not just the Zionist lobby, which we found out recently, and I'll touch back on this later, but organized crime wanted him gone, and so did the CIA. November 22nd, 1963. Bam! Kennedy's gone. Assassinated in Dallas, Texas. The man that would have replaced him, Lyndon B. Johnson, ushered in a new foreign policy. Everything that Kennedy wanted done, denuclearization for Israel, registering under FARA, which would later become AIPAC, the American Zionist Council, that all went by the wayside. And as a matter of fact, Lyndon B. Johnson began giving Israel more money, more aid, and even did a cover-up when American citizens were attacked by Israeli military on the USS Liberty. So Lyndon B. Johnson ushered in a Israel-first foreign policy that the United States has been under since the 1960s. Okay? Now, why is this important? This is important because it is with that backing and that political influence that many of them boys were able to enjoy a certain degree of anonymity. And if you did notice, you would be canceled. Okay? Now, prior to October 7th, if you're critical of Zionism, Israel, or any of this stuff, it was one of the fastest ways for you to get banned on social media platforms. I mean, maybe it's a coincidence that the heads of all the major social media platforms, you know what? I think I could show you better than I could fucking tell you. So let's go ahead and have fun with this. So, I mean, would you look at that? Mark Zuckerberg, Meta, Adam Mosseri, Instagram, Susan Wojcicki, YouTube, and, just for added measure, one of the founders of Google. And before you ask, yes. Why is this important? Well, this is important because you have pro-Israel individuals who are the heads of big social media platforms that billions of people use. So if you run these social media platforms and you don't like comments that are being made about a country that you have a enormous amount of love and respect for, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to sit there and let them be able to say that? No. You're going to ban that motherfucker to hell. And this is why, okay, for the longest time, you couldn't talk about this shit, and if you did, you'd probably get your fucking YouTube channel banned, okay? Or you would be wiped off the internet. This is why guys like Ryan Dawson never were able to blow up, because he was noticing at a time and era where certain individuals had power and didn't want this information getting out there, okay? And this is a topic that's been suppressed for fucking decades. Thanks to organizations like the ADL, Media Matters, the SPLC. Now, we talked about the history. We talked about American politics, how we got here. Now let's go to the big turning point. October 7th, 2023. A group of Palestinian militia fighters named Hamas breaks into multiple kibbutz all over Israel and kills 2,000 people, or at least that's what was reported first. First it was 2,000, then it went down to 1,200. Then we found out 400 of those people were IDF, aka combatants. Then we find out that there were no beheaded babies. Then we find out there were no burned babies. There's no proof of this. Then we find out that the Hannibal Directive was activated on that day, which is basically a directive that allows the IDF to kill Israelis as they're being kidnapped to avoid hostage negotiations like we're currently seeing now. And war was declared by Benjamin Netanyahu on October 7, 2023. The whole world rallied behind Israel when this happened. Right? I think all of us at that point, with the limited information that we had, at least in the United States, were like, hey, man, this is fucked up. They kidnapped and killed citizens. The media made it look really bad, didn't it? But as information passed and passed and passed, we figured out why this happened. And an event that should have made the world get behind Israel actually ended up hurting it later on. Let me explain. When October 7th happened, Benjamin Netanyahu was in the middle of a large-scale corruption trial for bribery, extortion, all types of shit, right? And he was being investigated for this. And basically what ended up happening was, when this happened, it allowed him to consolidate power, take it back, and the criminal case was suspended. And what ended up happening was, not only did he wage a war and declare a war on Hamas, but he also used that to wage a war all throughout the Middle East, to include its proxies of Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, the Houthis, right? And as he was doing this, he began a bombing campaign. And during these bombing campaigns, he's killed tens of thousands of children. Okay? Now, if he had done this maybe 20, 30 years ago, before the advent of social media, where we have access to free speech platforms like X and Rumble, he might have been able to get away with it. But in the new age, where social media is the new form of news, Palestinians on the ground started publishing and showing the images of the kids dying, blown to smithereens, bleeding profusely, dying from starvation, malnutrition. These images shocked the fucking world. And it made people start to ask, how is Israel getting away with this? Well, Exhibit A. Remember that pro-Israeli foreign lobby, foreign policy that I told you guys about? People started noticing that. They started to realize that the United States would do cover for Israel at the UN. They started to realize that the U.S. would sanction ICC for issuing arrest warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. And they also got arrest warrants for Ismail Haniyeh and Yahya Sinwar on the Palestinian side as well, but nobody talks about that. And it made people try to figure out, like, how are they able to do this? How are they able to kill all these kids with no fucking consequences? How are they able to create these blockades and let innocent people die? How are they able to do this shit? That, my friends, led to what I call the Great Awakening and noticing. When people started to research how they were able to fucking do this for so long, people started figuring out things like AIPAC. People started figuring out things like Zionist lobbies, institutes, financial places. They started figuring out that the entire board of BlackRock is them. And all the social media companies that are based out of the United States that have enormous amounts of audiences and users, then they started to figure out, well, what about the financial institutions? And people started connecting more and more and more dots. Because what's going on in Gaza made people curious as to how they were able to do this. How the hell are they able to kill fucking kids all day and not be held accountable? For those that are unaware, guys, something like 50% of Gaza has children under the age of 18. They're minors. Almost 50%. Gaza has roughly 2 to 2.5 million people. Almost 50% of that are children under 18. Well, let's do the math. If we know tens of thousands of people have died, we know that a majority of those deaths aren't Hamas fighters. They're children. The images, the grotesque video, the photos of cemeteries with bodies everywhere, most of them being kids, shine a really bright light on what Israel's been doing for decades. Now, with this awareness and big social media influencers like Candace Owens, Dan Bilzerian, Andrew Tate, myself, Nick Fuentes, Jake Shields, Sheikh Suleiman, Dr. Lupus, 1984, Sam Parker, right? And many others. I apologize if I didn't mention you. Have been on different social media platforms talking about this for a while. Hell, even Hassan has been talking about this. Right? So, in the age where the mainstream media no longer controls the narrative, and social media is the new media, you have influencers talking to you guys about something that had been cloaked in secrecy and censored for decades with mainstream media control of everything. But thanks to platforms like Rumble, X, and other alternatives, people with influence are able to finally talk about this problem that's been persistent in American foreign policy for fucking decades. And people are able to connect the dots now. Now, with this Great Awakening, a lot of things have happened. The college campuses of the United States have served as the battlegrounds for this discussion. Last year, under the Biden administration, colleges all over the United States had major protests against Israel's war in Gaza. Obviously, this was a problem. Though most of the protesters were peaceful, a lot of them were violent, like idiots. And obviously, you guys know me, I don't condone violence at all, and under any circumstance. I also don't condone the hurting of innocent people. All the protesters that are ripping off the hostage photos are pieces of shit. All life is valuable, whether Israeli or Palestinian. But these protests raged on all throughout last year. Sleepy Joe did nothing about it. But Donald Trump, who's received somewhere about $230 million from the Zionist lobby, namely this woman here, and all you have to do is follow the money. And before you ask, yes, if you guys want to see what type of political policy is going to be put out, figure out who the donors are. Always follow the money, chat. This is what I learned when I was an agent. Don't listen to the campaign's promises. Listen to who's giving him money. Look at their ideology. And that will let you know where you got to go. Now, as you know, the Adelsons are hardcore Zionists. The preservation of Israel is extremely important to them. Okay? And Miriam Adelson didn't give this money to Donald Trump to just fuck off. She wants something in return. And what she wants in return is consequences for individuals that do too much noticing. So fast forward past the Biden administration. Trump is sworn into office. And one of the first things he does is writes up an anti-Semitism bill that basically would use the IHRA's definition to go after college students that criticize Israel and the conflict in Gaza. Now, why is this problematic and why do you need to know about this? Some of you guys might be saying, well, I'm an American citizen. I don't give a fuck. I'm not in college. I don't go to Columbia. I don't go to Harvard. Why should I give a shit, Myron? I'll tell you why. Because if you're a college student in America and you came and you're studying here from another country and you talk shit about Donald Trump or you burn the American flag, nothing is going to happen to you. But if you criticize Israel, you're going to get deported. So let me get this straight. If I criticize the host country's government, I'm safe. But if I criticize the host country's ally, I get deported? Yeah, baffling, isn't it? And then you find out that they've already been doing this for a while. The head of Harvard was a woman named Claudine Gay. She was president during 2023 protests under enormous pressure. She either resigned or was fired. But the reason why is because they felt as though she didn't do enough to curb the students protesting. So they fired her and made an example out of her. This created a chilling effect on many of the other Ivy institutions. And they quickly realized if we want to get government funding and be able to do what we want to do and run our operation, we need to get in line. Now, this was under the Biden administration. Now that Trump is in, now they're really scared. So what you're basically seeing is you're seeing schools like Columbia, you're seeing schools like Harvard, who are at the forefront of this issue, quickly being neutered. Well, why? Well, as Jonathan Greenblatt says, this isn't a left or right problem. Jonathan Greenblatt, by the way, for those that are unaware, quick little, and before you ask, yes. Jonathan Greenblatt, the head of the ADL, he famously said this isn't a left or right issue, this is an age issue. The youth are no longer interested in supporting Israel, and that's a problem. Why is it a problem? Because these people are going to grow up and become politicians. These people are going to grow up and vote. These people are going to no longer see a need to support Israel. And we all know that if the United States didn't support Israel, they'd have a problem. So people like Jonathan Greenblatt, other Zionist lobby organizations, put an enormous amount of pressure on the White House to pass anti-Semitism bills to curb this shit now. Stop it now. If you get rid of the college students protesting, you're going to create a chilling effect and everyone's going to chill the fuck out and shut up. Because not only are they killing a bunch of kids in Gaza, but Israel is trying to wage a war in the Middle East. Iran is their big target. And the ADL and these organizations understand that if they don't have American support, they can't do what they need to do. They can't finish the job, as Netanyahu always says. Israel wants hegemony in the Middle East and needs to take out all of its adversaries. They've already done so. They had a successful Patriot attack. They ran Bashar al-Assad out of there. They've pretty much decimated Hamas. The Houthis are being destroyed right now by the United States. What's left? Iran. So there's never been a more pivotal moment where Israel is in a position to deliver the death shot to Iran than right now. But in order for them to get that death shot, they need unequivocal American support. But the problem is that the youth are waking up and realizing that this isn't a fair deal for us. Why are our tax dollars funding a war that doesn't benefit us, that kills innocent people? So they said, nah, we got to shut this shit down. Now these anti-Semitism bills are passed. People like Mahmoud Khalil are getting arrested in Colombia for speaking out against what's going on in Gaza. Now, coming back to what I said before, because we were talking about this, the reason why you need to care about this as an American citizen is because it isn't going to end at foreign nationals like Mahmoud Khalil. A green card holder, chat, just so you guys know, because that's what Khalil is right below a U.S. citizen. The only main difference is that they can't vote. Green card holders are pretty much damn near U.S. citizens. The closest you're going to be to a U.S. citizen without being one. Right now, Khalil is in the middle of deportation proceedings. He was arrested by ICE agents, or ICE officers, ERO, and moved to Louisiana. Now, some people, what I call MAGA retards, think that this is awesome. Yeah, get him out of here. Woo! But, like most short-sighted idiots, they don't understand that this is the slippery slope that could fuck all of us up. If they infringe on Khalil's rights and freedom of speech, it's not going to be long until they start doing it to U.S. citizens. Though I don't agree with Khalil, and he's a radical leftist, I have the wherewithal to understand that when it comes to taking people's rights away, they never just take that right away. They take that right away, test the waters. All right, let's keep going. And if we continue on this trajectory, I predict that they're going to start doing this on U.S. citizens. Did you guys notice that ICE used to post every day the amount of people that they deported? But now they haven't been doing that? You guys notice that? When the Trump administration came in, Tom Homan famously, yeah, we're going to deport these guys. Mass deportations, day one. Woo! And that's what most Americans voted for Trump for, to handle the immigration problem. Well, they hoodwinked us. Instead of mass deportations, immigration agents now are focusing all their resources on going after college students that don't like Israel. So your tax dollars are being spent to remove some fucking Scottish kid at some random university somewhere for saying, I don't like Israel, who's legally here, by the way, on a student visa. And those tax dollars are not being spent on the violent criminals and degenerates that are here illegally. We only have a finite amount of resources and immigration enforcement agents to deport people. But we're prioritizing getting rid of people for Israel instead of being illegally here and breaking our immigration laws. All of this is going on in America. And I apologize, guys, for this long monologue, but I think it's really important for you guys to understand all of this and see where we are in America now. The reason why people like Nick Fuentes, or whatever they want to say, like the radical right, is gaining prominence. People like Candace Owens, all this other stuff. The reason why the DailyWire is failing and conservative media is failing and the numbers are down is because people are tired of the lies. They want the truth. The great noticing is here, and people don't have the wool over their eyes anymore. So when Ben Shapiro is screaming, Israel has a right to defend itself, Americans are tuning out. They're not interested anymore. And to add fuel to the flame, I'm cooking right now, by the way, guys. Like the video. I told you guys it's going to be a longer monologue. To add fuel to the flame, Donald Trump inadvertently promised to declassify a lot of documents. These documents, Epstein Files, 9/11, JFK, RFK, MLK. What do these 5 events have in common, chat? They all have significant Israeli involvement. Okay? Now, for years, people that said, hey, I think Israel's involved in killing JFK. For years, these people were ridiculed, mocked, kicked out of public discourse, insulted, canceled, debanked, lives ruined. Many of them. Many Kennedy researchers. But earlier this month, roughly 80,000 documents were released from the JFK file. And these documents revealed something very important. It revealed that the conspiracy theorists were right the whole fucking time. Thanks to recent unredacted documents and testimony from James Angleton, a former high-ranking CIA officer who was instrumental in helping Israel get the nuclear bomb. You know, the same nuclear bomb that JFK died for trying to keep them from getting? That guy? Yeah. James Angleton admitted he helped Israel get the nuclear bomb after the JFK administration in a 1970s hearing that was classified for many decades. On top of that, documents were revealed where Israeli intelligence was involved. It had been redacted all these years, but it finally was unredacted. So the conspiracy theorists were right. So when people like Ben Shapiro say, who cares about the JFK files? Who cares? He said this roughly a week ago, went viral. I'll tell you who cares. The American public finally does. And they don't give a fuck about Israel anymore. People are waking up. This is a big part of the reason why DailyWire is falling off that no one wants to admit. A big reason why the DailyWire is failing is because people are waking up to Israel's treachery. And Ben Shapiro firing Candace Owens for calling out that treachery actually backfired on them. Because conservative media has been complaining about censorship for over a decade now. But they practice the very censorship that they rallied against. And on top of that, to make this even better, that censorship regime that Ben Shapiro was complaining about, but he never actually had to endure, suppressed some of his biggest opponents. Guys like Nick Fuentes, right? So effectively, traditional conservative media, guys like Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, Bongino, Crowder, a lot of these guys, right, that were pushed, that were pro-Israeli, they had the monopoly on conservative media in America. Whereas people that were considered too far right or too, dangerous or too divisive were effectively censored in every way. But now, with the Great Awakening and the rise of free speech platforms, Ryan Dawson, of course, as well, Corey Hughes, all these guys, people that you guys have seen me bring on the show, all these guys have been talking about this shit forever, but they've been censored. Shout out to all those guys. But what I'm saying is that the censorship regime removed these voices out. And you guys were able to get the Daily Wire, Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA, safe conservative media that never criticizes Israel, that never tells the American public about where our tax dollars are going or what it's doing. But now with the Great Awakening, like I discussed before, and the rise of social media platforms that are free speech like Rumble and X, people are now finding out about this information. And they're pissed. Because the conspiracy theorists, as shown with the JFK file, were right all along. So if they lied about JFK, what else are they lying about? Are they lying about 9/11? Are they lying about Epstein? Or Epstein, whatever you guys want to call him? And once you sow that doubt in the American public, it lets theories run wild. So, I say all that to say this, because I know I've been going on here for a minute. But the cloak of secrecy that them boys used to enjoy has effectively been lifted. And now we are seeing the state of Israel for what it is. A parasitic, apartheid ethno-state nation that practices the very supremacy it criticizes others for having, and a disregard for human life that isn't Israeli, as shown by the indiscriminate bombings and mass murder of children. And Americans are waking up to this and saying, no more. We don't want our tax dollars going over there and killing kids. No more. If we're not going to fund Ukraine, we shouldn't fund Israel either. No more. We're tired of being censored for criticizing a foreign government in a country where the First Amendment is the First Amendment for a reason. No more. We're tired of people like Ben Shapiro trying to sit there and tell us that JFK doesn't matter. It was 60 years ago when he still cries about no more. What you guys are witnessing right now is a pivotal moment for all parties. Because on one end, Israel is fighting to control the narrative that they've enjoyed for many decades through control of mainstream media so that they can continue to wage their war in the Middle East and get rid of Iran, but they need American support. But on the other hand, you got a wave of people that are waking up and realizing that we don't want our tax dollars to fund foreign wars that don't benefit us. We found out about Iraq. We don't want a part two of this. And thanks to social media, you guys are able to get this information. You guys didn't get this information in 2003. There was no alternative media. Alex Jones was talking about it, but there wasn't a thing yet. But now, with Rumble X, people speaking out, talking about what's going on in the Middle East, we're realizing that our greatest ally might have never really been our greatest ally. They're involved in the assassination of a sitting president. They killed 30 sailors on the USS Liberty. There's fingerprints all over 9/11 of Israeli involvement or foreknowledge, bare minimum. RFK was assassinated by a false flag Palestinian where the shots didn't even come from where he was. People are waking up. Epstein was a spy that compromised American politicians and people of power for private gain and to create leverage. People are waking up to this shit. Information that was once suppressed is getting out there. Guys like myself, Candace Owens, Nick, etc. Right? We're waking people up, man. We're the fucking alarm clock. I mean, hell, during the course of this monologue that I've given, I've seen that we've gained like 500 to 1,000 live viewers. People are interested in this information because it's been suppressed for so long. So, I'll end with this. This next year is going to be extremely important. Escalations are rising in the Middle East. Drills are being done. Iran has already said that they will retaliate if the United States attacks them. Trump has been very firm, saying that if they try to procure a nuclear weapon, they will be destroyed. Israel's working with Qatar. They're still waging the war in Gaza. They went back in. The ceasefire is over. So this is a very turbulent time. And Israel knows this, but they're going to stop at nothing to destroy Iran because they've never had this opportunity to land the kill shot like they have now. The axis of resistance is effectively destroyed or dismantled. All that's left now is Iran, and it's very vulnerable. So they're going to continue to shut down college protests. They're going to continue to silence people. They're going to continue, or they might even introduce legislation that would suppress the speech of American citizens that criticize what's going on. They've already done it at the college campuses and shown that it's successful. Khalil's arrest sent a very strong message. Criticize our government, we don't care. Criticize their government, that's a fucking problem. You're going to jail. With that said, let me know what you guys want in the comments, what you guys think. That is my analysis. Very long monologue. But I don't think anyone else can kind of weave all these different facts in an environment that we're in like that.